I'll take your point earlier about what is in the control of a leader and what is beyond control, and contrast it with, we have Arjun here who heads Uber for Business for APAC. And clearly, as a founder of a company, you have certain level of control, which you might not have as a person within as a leader within a large organization, right? And Arjun, so my next question is to you. Uber, of course, has been through a roller coaster ride. I don't know how long you've been there, but it was touted as it was the blue-eyed unicorn of the investors. It could do nothing wrong. It was going to disrupt transportation and many other industries. And then there were a bunch of senior management changes that happened. There were a bunch of things around culture. And of course, during this pandemic, it has been disproportionately hit because transport just as a sector has been so badly hit. And you've had to, as a company, as an organization, had to take some very tough calls. So I want to understand from you, how has that impacted you? How have you dealt with that and made sense of it? And how have you how do you supported your team manage this challenge that we all are facing, but some of us can't help living through some of those decisions?
Yeah. Thanks, Pooja. Thanks for that question. I've been with the company for about 4.5 years now, so I've seen some of the turbulence as well as how the company's completely reinvented itself, and I think it's phenomenal the way that the company is forging ahead. The pandemic has certainly thrown headwinds and challenges that were unexpected and particularly difficult for the travel industry, right, at a large, and we are part of that in a way. But when you diversify into other business models, you do have the ability to continue to be more resilient. So the Eats business, for instance, is that business unit of ours that's really helping in times like this. I think that's been pretty smart of the company. But kind of zooming out a little bit on your earlier allegory, where you said that you gave an example of somebody going in the current, helping them in one direction, and suddenly they're faced with unfamiliar currents and challenges, and they find it really difficult, or they have to dig deep to figure out what needs to be done. And we're seeing the same thing with people, right? I mean, they're swimming in unfamiliar waters, all of us, on this call, people in our teams, and we're all learning to, requiring to learn a new stroke, a new style in which we can raise ourselves, raise our collective team, to a performance level that helps our company, our performance, all of us individually to kind of, to flourish. So different people, we have to first understand the context of different people take things differently. So from each person's perspective, you start appreciating where they stand in the spectrum of being able to overcome and resiliently face some of these issues. You're able to better empathize and relate to the context that is required to deal with them. And sometimes some of them actually become part of your core group that helps lift the overall organization. So from that perspective, I think leaders have to be compassionate and empathetic towards how their teams are going to be able to effectively work in times like this. It definitely becomes paramount.
Yeah. Any example of that? The challenge I feel with something like an empathy, vulnerability is like we are able to say it, but it's so hard to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. Good question, right? So I'll give you an example. We sometimes take it for granted that people in our team who've been high performers, all right, are the ones that will continue to perform high despite all odds. Because you see, in our vocabulary, we've got, every company's got their cultural taxonomy, right? So you'll talk about grit and you'll talk about resilience and determination. But what you realize is that we're all human, we're all fragile and susceptible and vulnerable to different, contexts. And what COVID, quarantining and self-isolation has done is completely fracture what's construed to be normal. So if you are a very high performer, and I'm giving you a live performance from someone in my team, live example from someone in my team, one of our best performers, he lives alone in a different country from where he is. A very energetic and very, physically active person running ultra marathons. And for the first time, you'll actually start seeing there's a crack in his armor. There's that chink which is getting exploited by having to be just in the four walls of a room. And then you have to understand that, and if you can catch it, because the cues are not always very obvious, the cues are very subtle, right? And so you have to sometimes force the issue, force the discussion, as uncomfortable somebody who's a high performer extrovert would be to open up and have that chat. And when you do, I think it's a little bit more liberating for you as their manager and them, and for themselves as well, right? And then you start the process. And to Ajay's point, we're not the experts on this, but your company and has to be the one that provides access to different avenues and to different help resources to be able to go and do that. And Uber has been, I think, world class, one of the best in terms of ensuring that employees have access to those assistance programs and resources, right? So that is really paramount. The other thing that I'll talk about is generally, collectively as a team, you need to also delegate effectively to people who are able to, take charge and run some of these, because there's nothing better than people taking on, certain responsibilities beyond what may now become mundane day-to-day routines, right? So I'll give you a very interesting example, and I learned a lot from it. So our India team, we usually have happy hours, right, on Fridays. And I got an invite from the team who was in charge of, setting this up for 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on a Friday. And my initial reaction was like, that's intruding into personal time. I should probably go and tell my team that's not right. Have you thought this through? And what was very interesting was the rationale given was, if we do it in work time, it's just one of those things that we have to do. Remember, Friday evening, people used to go out. They used to go and hang out with friends. The conversation used to be not about work. It used to be all the banter that you have with your colleagues, whether it's with your colleagues or friends. And this started, mimicking that. So the way that people took up to that 7 to 9 on a Friday evening surprised me as well. And I learned a lot that we have to kind of, try and evolve what our own thinking is sometimes, because we aren't able to break free of what a work day and a work week looks like. Because it's as weird as one of my colleagues put it. It's no longer working from home, is it? It's living at the workplace. Yeah. So how do you adapt your own understanding and appreciation of how people are, relating to this, what is possibly going to be most impactful and helpful, both for the organizational productivity, which is paramount, as if the organization prospers, you as individuals will prosper, right? So what works for the organization, and how do you toe the line between that, and what do you do to support, employees in succeeding personally and professionally?